Hi and welcome to our program. Today we are visiting the exhibition Speeches of the World, organized by the Festival of the Century. Let's check it out. Okay. So many murders regarding to these speeches. That's really sad.
Don't be a leader.
Clearly.
Then you're going to be murdered. But Indira Gandhi was, well, she was really a tough woman. But she fought for equality, and at the UN Environmental Conference in Stockholm, the first environmental conference of UN, she linked equality and inequality, of course, with climate change and with environment. In this respect, that she said, we have to convince all the poor people that we can improve the environment without taking the bread from them. Okay. And that was her main idea when she spoke at this conference. But she was the first at all to talk about environmental change.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, 72, that's really early.
Yeah, and she wasn't remembered for that. She was remembered for talking about environmental change, to say, and then we have to do something about inequality. It was the inequality case that was the main thing, and that was the thing she was remembered for. But she talked about environmental change.
Maybe people could not really relate to that problem at the time, and inequality was more.
And this was not. It was a conference about environment, not a climate change conference. No one talked about climate change. But this was the first environmental conference, so, well, it was
something
a new topic.
It was happening at the time. Wow.
Yes, it's a bit cool. She was cool.
Did she have, I don't know, education in the area? Was there any experts that she consulted? Why was she especially concerned about the environment in a time that nobody really seemed to care so much?
I am not sure why she was especially concerned about environment. I know she mentioned it, but as I said, it was not her own main focus. Her focus was to
the inequality.
Yes, to improve these hundreds of millions of people in India's daily lives. And for the part, she succeeded.
Yeah. Imagine if we would have listened to her in 72.
Yeah.
We would be way better.
Imagine if we listened to Greta Thunberg today.
Yeah, imagine.
Yeah.
My God. And what does the quote say?
We shall show the poor majority of the world that ecology and environmental protection will not work against the poor's interests, but will serve them to improve their own lives. Yeah,
that's what what you said. It was a message. Yeah. And I also had a question about the Greta. Yeah? What do you think about her speeches?
Because she's so cool. Sometimes she's better than other times, but I really love her speeches. I think she's a good speaker, and I love what she says.
Okay, and
I think often she's criticized. Oh, grow up and all that. Exactly. But someone has to be the one who is saying these things. Kali Suzuki and what their names are. They have to. We have to have these people coming from outside of the political circles and say something in a clear way.
Yeah. And people cannot really put a minimum age to know what's right or what's wrong. It's not because she's younger that she doesn't really know what she's talking about.
But when they accuse him of being too young or too not not knowing about what she's saying. I think it's a kind of a defense because, you know.
Yeah, they cannot really argue with the rest.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think she's a very strong speaker and a very bright young person.
And do you think she targets her speech to young people in general? Because usually when she has these major appearances, there are like student, it's not
strikes.
Strikes,
Yeah.
and everything. Do you think she's talking more to young people, or?
Yes, yes. These very clear and clear-cut messages are good for young people. I think yes, and certainly she doesn't speak for old men.
Yeah, the problem is that the power is kind of in the hands of older people. So. Yeah,
but if she did that in the beginning, I don't know. First time we heard about Greta Thunberg was when she was sitting before the Stockholm Parliament and said that she was making her own school strike. And then I think she spoke without having some special audience in mind. But as time went by and she went famous, of course, she's
narrowing it down, kind of.
And has this focus on school strikes and therefore also the pupils.
Yeah. And that's great, like you can actually see immediately the consequences of her speech. I mean, it should be bigger consequences at the political level, but what can one do?
I think, yes, I think she's a very good speaker.
And she's so young. Oh my God. Yeah. Should we go to the next one?
I'm an old man. I have never made a speech like Greta Thunberg. Wow.
Yeah. Do you also think that it's
some people are better than others?
Yeah, that's also true. It's a bit natural, but you can also really work it. So, do you think, as you were saying before with the Mandela and Obama, do you think it's more like she prepares more, let's say, or is it like she speaks from the heart?
You can hear she prepares. Now she prepares. How dare you speech was a very prepared speech. But we also we have seen for example, the first speeches she made. It came from within.
Yeah.
She is Greta Thunberg. She is not a puppet.
Yes. And I also would like to ask something else, because usually when we see these speeches, we focus on the person that is saying it. But what about the backstage? Like, there are people that also work with the speeches and everything.
Yes.
Is there a team?
Yes. The best. It's said the best speech that Bill Clinton ever made was a speech when his equipment. What's the name?
He had like a wire.
Yeah. What's the name? Yes.
Ah, so people were telling him what to say.
Yeah, the teleprompt.
Ah, the teleprompter.
It failed,
yes.
And then he had to improvise, and then he made the best speech ever. So
funny.
Of course, all presidents, all politicians, they have speech writers, and I think it's an important thing. And Greta Thunberg also has speech writers today. But the point is that they shall be able to make the words a part of themselves.
Yeah. So do you think that we can have like a really good speech, and if the speaker is not so good, it's not going to be a great speech, and if it's the other way around?
It can be very, very good. It depends of the person, and it depends of the situation that the speech is delivered in.
Okay.
And of course, it depends on which audience you ask. Did this move you? So it's important things You cannot, in an abstract way, say that this speech is the best.
Yeah, because there's so many things around.
And you should read Cicero, because Cicero, the old Cicero, he has made a lot of theory about these things.
Ah.
He's the world's
like he analyzes?
best known speaker. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That sounds interesting. I will take a look at it. That sounds interesting.
And it's, in addition, it's very funny. It's a very, very funny speecher.
Okay. More points.
Yes.
Good. Cool. I will check it out. Thank you. Yes. And so, what about this one? Oh my God, she's so young here.
Hillary.
I didn't even recognize her.
It's Hillary Clinton. She had this difficult position as the president's wife, the first lady. It's a very difficult position because you are not elected to something, to anything, but you are expected to support the president, but also to manage on your own. And she really did manage on her own. She was very good, is a very good politician, and she was a very good speaker too. And I think the most famous speech she made was at a UN's conference on women's rights in Beijing in 1995, where she made an incredible, convincing speech about the importance of making equal opportunities to both sexes. And
in 95.
1905. Yeah, and it was in Beijing. It was a very complicated thing because it was China, and it was complicated because it was UN, where, of course, many interests cross each other.
Yeah, of course.
And female rights are. It's not an easy point, but she made this speech here and rose to the stars because of it. And what she says, the quote I chose here, says, human rights are women's rights and women's rights are human rights. But in fact, it was very difficult for me to choose because
all the
there was
amazing.
A string of a cool sentences.
Okay. Actually, like, also out of curiosity, how long did it take you to curate this exhibition? Like, did you already have some speeches in mind, or did you really focus on searching?
I have some speeches in mind, but I searched, especially I searched for the female speeches because there are more known male speeches, of course.
Yeah, that's also
because
true.
Most speeches that you know about have been politicians, and then you also say they have been male. So,
exactly.
Collie Suzuki, I had a bit difficult to find her speech, but then I succeeded. Well, how long did it take? A week?
Ah! Okay, I was expecting like 2 months or more. But yeah, if you already had some ideas in your head,
I had some ideas.
It's way easier.
Hillary was, of course.
You already knew
obvious.
that it was gonna.
Mandela was obvious.
Of course. Malcolm X.
India Gandhi was obvious. Malcolm X was obvious. Cicero was obvious. Well. Emmeline Pankhurst, who we shall talk about, was obvious. So some people are just obvious.
Okay. And did you take into consideration to have a balance, like a gender balance?
No, but
or team balance?
I wanted to show female speakers. But it was difficult. It is difficult to make a total gender balance because there are just a fewer female speakers, especially if you go, let's say, 30, 40 years and more back in time.
Yeah, no female speakers there.
No. But some of the very good female speakers who have been in the past are feminist speakers, because of course suffragettes were women, and then you have Emily Pankhurst as a good example.
Did you feel like? Do you feel that women, when they had these speeches, when there weren't that many women giving speeches, do you feel like they had to kind of compensate because they were women, and like if I want to be heard, if I want to pass my message, I need to have, like, I don't know, put more effort into the speech or put more effort into preparation?
So. Women always have had to put more effort in their work to obtain the same as male speakers or male politicians or whatever. So yes, I think, and also in many cases they are very tough people, because it has been more difficult to succeed as a woman. You saw Indira Gandhi; she was extremely tough.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and when we talk about Emmeline Pankhurst, she was hard-boiled. I wouldn't love to have her as a mother.
So, and do you feel like that's all from this compensation thing?
Yeah.
Or maybe if they were living in these times, do you think they would be like, I don't want to use the word softer, but maybe their personality and their way of shaping and writing the speeches would be different? Because now, of course, they still have to compensate, but maybe not so much. Do you think that would be a difference?
Yes, I think so. I think so. It was extremely tough to be a suffragette in the end of the 19th century or the beginning of the 20th century. Not only you had to suffer violence and so on, you also had to suffer ridicule.
Yeah. And that must be so hard to just put yourself out there and really talk about what you believe and people mocking you. It must be really demotivating.
Precisely.
Oh, it's so sad.
Yeah.
But yeah. Maybe we can.
But then again, they had done something and they had said something that changed the world.
Yes. And that's what matters right now. Okay, so next one. And
especially Emmeline Pankhurst, we have a lot to thank her for because of her role in the female suffrage. She was one of the first, not the first, but one of the first to demand equal rights for men and women. She was from England, and she was the first to organize feminist organization, and she was a very good organizer. But the price came because she had 3 daughters who also were great feminists, but they couldn't come to terms in length.
Okay.
The daughters thought that she deserted the feminist case, and then she had one exported to Australia and never saw her again. And the 2 others didn't ever speak with their mother anymore. She was so tough.
Yeah.
She started being a socialist, and then as the years went by, she was more and more conservative, and just before her death in 1928, she became a member of the Conservative Party in Great Britain. And that's very curious, because the Conservatives fighted against women's rights and the right to suffrage.
Was that kind of the origin of the conflict, let's say?
The conflicts, at least it blossoms when the First World War breaks out in 1914, because she, without bothering to listen to others in the organization, declares that now we stop our feminist demands until the war is over, because the nation is more important than feminist rights. And that was a great departing theme.
Okay. Okay.
But she was, she nonetheless, she is, I think she's the most important feminist of the past. I cannot remember any other with such a strength before we enter the 1970s. So she's a very important and very, in a way, successful feminist.
Okay. And how long was she active? Like an active activist?
From the beginning of the 1870s and until her death in 1928.
Okay,
but
that's a
the
long
great
time.
years were the 1890s and the time until the war broke out in 1914. So 25 years.
Okay. And which direction did their daughters took the movement to?
One of the daughters actually succeeded her. One of the daughters became a socialist on the left side on the British Labour Party, and the third daughter, well, she perished in Australia.
Ah, okay.
The youngest. She was underage, and therefore the mother could export her.
Ah, it was kind of payback type of thing? Like
The
you
youngest
export me,
daughter
I will
was
export her.
underage and didn't agree with her mother in this.
She was 8 and she didn't agree?
Underage.
Ah, underage. I was like, she was
and
8.
I think underage was every person below 21 years or 23 years, so she was a grown-up, but a young grown-up.
Okay.
And her mother punished her by exporting her to Australia. So
that's
tough woman.
I kind of see where I wouldn't
She
like to
liked
have
war.
it as a mother.
Her war.
She liked war.
Yeah, her warfare.
Okay.
Her feminist warfare. It was a militant warfare. The Pankhurst feminists made sabotage and they burned houses down, and they were tough.
Okay. So there was kind of violence involved.
Yeah.
Okay. That is tough.
Yeah, I think so.
Indeed. And what's the quote?
No power on earth can my poor English.
I have no idea.
No
I cannot
power
help
on
you.
earth can rule a human being who doesn't allow it herself. How weak it. Yes. No power on earth can rule a person who doesn't allow it herself. Be her very weak.
Okay. So she's saying that people need to be tough, and if they're
Perhaps
weak,
you
they
think
will
I
be...
am weak, but you cannot rule me if I don't allow it.
Ah, okay. So it's the other way around.
Yes.
Okay. That is a powerful
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah.
End quote. So interesting. Nice.
Yeah.
So next one.
Václav Havel,
Isn't this your...
the writer, the author from Czechoslovakia, who became the first president when the revolution came in the autumn 1989. He was strictly democratic in his ruling. I think it was very cool of him when the Slovaks wanted to separate from the Czechoslovak Republic. Then he was against it, but said, okay, we have to obey this demand. And he was very unpopular at that point in the Czech parts of the country, because he allowed Czechoslovakia to become two
separation.
countries. But he stood his ground, and I think it was a kind of test.
Okay.
How democratic was he? Well, he was very democratic. He's also called the rock star president because he had a weakness for rock stars. So the Rolling Stones and Frank Zappa and Lou Reed and the whole gang, they were guests at Havel's.
So he invited him.
House.
He invited him over.
Yeah. And then we have all these pictures. Havel going, walking on the street and talking with Lou Reed, and Havel just accidentally meeting the Rolling Stones and say hi and so on. Yes, he had something there. But
the perks of being president.
In a way, it was also very smart done of him because he associated him with.
Popular figures, kind of?
Yes, the best of the pop musicians. And then he also associated himself with the younger segments of the Czechoslovakian state. So, and the communist rule before him had done the opposite. Suppressed rock music. So I think it was a wise, smart move for him. But when you see the pictures, you can see he likes it. The rock star president.
Yeah, I can imagine. That was it for today. Thank you so much for staying with us. We hope you enjoyed the programs. See you next time.
Ungdomsradio. 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 Ungdomsradio.